They joined hands, and so the world ended, and the next one began.
They were infinite. They were the beginning and the ending. They were eternity. Hey everybody, this is Kat.
And Rachel.
And you're listening to the Smut Peddlers podcast, a show for people who love books, especially when they're smut. We discuss our likes, our dislikes, and share all our favorite moments with you.
Today we're talking about Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. So grab your favorite beverage and get ready to burn with us.
So we are in part 2, the second half of part 2, which is chapters 66 through 89. We told our ratings in the last one. It is 5 stars, 1 pepper. Nothing crazy happens in the pepper realm.
Well, at least in the pepper.
World. Yes. There's no additional peppers in this book. We're still at 1.
Yeah.
But we ended pretty much our last episode with Aelin, Rowan, Aedion all preparing to go to the castle and pretty much attack the king. Oh, and Chaol. Kind of everyone. They're all going to the castle. Goal is take down the tower. Maybe kill a king. Potentially kill Dorian. We don't know.
Yeah. It's all part of the plan. They have decided to kill Dorian, like as a group, because Chaol is now on board with the he can't be saved.
Yes.
Just terrifying.
Yeah. We left off with in the witches department. Astrid and Manon had a heart-to-heart where Astrid pretty much told her about her grandmother forcing her, she had a baby and her witchling didn't make it, and then her grandmother pretty much like kicked her out, and Sorrel and Vesta, I think, are the two that pretty much saved her and brought her back. And so Astrid let Manon in on all of this information that wasn't given to her previously. And so we left off with the witches. They went back, and then Manon asked Astrid to go and do something with her. And so they flew off. So we don't really know what's going on there. But that's kind of our recap. Elite is still in the dungeons, unfortunately.
Yep. Not great. Not looking good.
Dorian is still fighting against the demon that's inside of him.
Yeah.
So
losing more of himself.
Yeah. Every update is just Dorian is not doing well.
It's not a good book for Dorian.
No, this is not a great. It's not doing great.
Just a lot of sadness and suffering.
Yeah,
and
pretty
fear.
much.
Yeah.
So we are starting off the day of the attack. And Aelin has sent Lysandra and Evangeline off to Nezrin's family house, which is out kind of in the farmlands outside of Rifthold. The goal is for them to kind of be as far away as possible, and a big reason that Aelin didn't want to ask Lysandra to be a part of it was mostly because of Evangeline. She wanted her to be... didn't want anything to happen to her, so that Evangeline had somebody, which is very sweet. And so they are on their way out of town, and Aelin is preparing for a day of potential battle, pretty much, because they're about to launch an attack on the king. So Aelin is out market. She can't sleep. She wakes up kind of earlier than everyone else, and she goes out to get breakfast in the main market that is there. And she notices a commotion. And during that commotion, she kind of goes over to see what's going on, and she sees a message in Vogblood on the stone wall. And it says, "Witch killer, the human is still inside him," which is, of course, referring to Dorian. And
so this is what we realize that Manon had done. Because they had mentioned that she was taking Astrid and they had to go do something in Rifthold. So we know now that that is what she decided to do. And it's also the way that she decides to pay the life debt back, which is fair enough because I think she knows that Aelin will accept it as the, like, trade for the life debt. I remember reading it the first time and being like, psh, come on, that's it? You're, like, gonna send her a message that he's, like, okay, but not help with it at all? Alright, whatever. So yeah, that's how she pays the life debt, and she, like, rushes to go tell them.
Yeah. She immediately goes straight to Chaol.
Yeah.
Because
he's the other person
ultimately
would kill him if it weren't her.
Ultimately, she kind of her last stand was that it is Chaol's decision whether or not Dorian lives or dies. Kind of, I guess, unless the tides turned very quickly. He is the deciding factor on whether Dorian lives or dies. So she immediately goes and tells him that
you were wrong.
The witch that she was fighting and now owes her a life debt is like, you're wrong. He's in there. Like, he can be saved. He wants to not be in there anymore. And you're like, yay. Thank goodness.
They start to talk about, like, what the plan is when they, like, get ready to go and like, execute the plan of what they're gonna get done. So, like, basically what we learn is that they're splitting into, like, 2 teams. So Aedion and Rowan and Chaol? Or is it just Aedion and Rowan?
Aedion and Rowan go together, and then Chaol and Selena.
And Selena go together. And so Aedion and Rowan are in charge of bringing the wildfire to... Hellfire to... Sorry, mixing up my fantasy books. The Hellfire to the base of the clock tower, like underneath the clock tower, basically.
Yeah, so pretty much their goal is
to bring it under there and then, like, light it, and then that will destroy the clock tower. And they have to try to do that while... I hate this part of the plan so much.
Well, Aelin and Chaol cause a distraction.
Cause a distraction by just walking into the castle. The idea is that she's coming back as the champion, as Selena, and she's captured Chaol, who she's gonna bring into the castle
as, like, the leader of the rebels.
As, like, the reward for the king of, like, here you go, I brought back, like, the leader of the rebels, the guy who betrayed you. Also, I'm back now. Hey. Rowan hates the plan.
Yes, he doesn't like being separated, but he also knows that him and Aedion are the only 2 that could do the task that they need to do, and he also knows that the only way, like, they are all in the spots that they need to be with their skill sets.
No one can swap spots.
Yeah. So a big thing is that obviously the sewers are dark. So they can't hold a torchlight because they have hellfire in their hands and they don't want to light it on fire or will explode. So the idea is that Rowan and Aedion are in their Fae form, so they have Fae seeing still and hearing, so they have the ability to see and hear better underground in a dark space than Chaol and Aelin have. And the king knows Chaol and Aelin, so they're gonna split off and do their things. They, of course, say their goodbyes. Aelin is very much in her feels. She's scared she's gonna lose Rowan. This is their first, like, I guess, true battle where they've given into the fact that they're, like, together, sort of. And she does the same, like, has a heart-to-heart with Aedion too beforehand, and is pretty much, like, looking into his eyes and seeing her own, like, seeing herself in him. And I think one of the big things that I thought was very cute that Aedion says to her is 10 years of shadows, but no longer. Light up the darkness.
And he calls her Majesty.
Yeah, it's so good. And she, of course, responds, let's go rattle the stars. It's so good. And you're like, girl, let's do it.
She also says for Marion to him. Ugh. Yeah, that conversation it makes me happy.
It's very good.
It just makes you want everything needs to work out. Please. Thanks. Thank you. Please, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
I need it all to be good. So Lysandra and Evangeline are making their way out of town, and the one thing is, this is, as a reminder, they're doing this on solstice. And so
yeah,
the town is like alive and going about and doing their thing. So Lysandra and Evangeline are having a hard time getting out of the city in their carriage. They're getting blocked by people like walking the roadways. Like there are fights in crowds as they're trying to leave. They're really struggling to just like get out of the city as a baseline to leave town, which it just takes them a little bit longer.
It's also one of the other reasons why they're doing it today specifically is because if they can take the tower down and then free magic, and they're doing it on the solstice, it's when Aelin's power is going to be the strongest. So she has the best possibility of being able to like fight against the king.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're trying to make it out of town. Lysandra is like having an internal battle of like leaving her friends behind. But it's also the first time that she's ever been free to make her own decisions.
Yeah.
Which is like my favorite part of like her snippet of her leaving town and like having that internal battle. She kind of realizes like, I can do what I want. I can make any decision that I want. I don't have to think about anybody else. I can make my decision for myself. I can make my decision for my friends or for Evangeline, but it's my decision. And that's kind of all we get in like, and then we flip back to Aedion and Rowan struggling in the sewers.
Yeah, a big thing too is Chaol and Aedion, like a week prior, went to test out the Hellfire, and they used 1/10 of the amount that they planned to use for the tower, and it was noted that they could see smoke for miles, and that it like obliterated everything that was like in that area. So this really puts kind of heightens the scenario that Rowan and Aedion are in, where they're carrying 10 times the amount of that in their hands through a sewer. Like, okay, let's just hope we're fine. But yeah, they are going through and like trudging through the catacombs as they're leaving. It's dark. It's dark as heck, but the whole thought is that their path is clear because Aelin tricked Lorcan to destroy all of the Wordhounds.
Yeah. She's got plans on plans on plans.
Yeah.
She never tells anyone about ever.
Yep.
So great.
So they make it to Rowan and Aedion make it to the catacombs. And the second they get even close to the tower, they both start getting headaches, as we've learned from previous books, that anyone near the Wordstones or anything like that, they get headaches. Anything associated with the onyx rings, the necklaces, everything, they have headaches. And they start talking about headaches. Our big thing is Kaltain had headaches before, like right when Roland got a ring, he started talking about his headaches. So like, there's just all of these scenarios.
Headaches are bad.
So they have those, which is really fun. And then while this is happening, Chaol and Aelin are doing their thing. They're doing their Selena Chaol Captain of the Guard cosplay in the street where Chaol is pretty much chained up, and Aelin is dragging him behind her to make it look like she captured him.
Yeah. They come to the castle gates, and they find that all of Chaol's, like, former guards, the ones that were, like, part of his, like, section, have all been killed, and their corpses are hanging from, like, the gates. And that includes Russ and Brello, which is so sad. So, like, we learned now why they haven't responded back to all of the messages. They were killed and tortured, and then they've been left out to rot. And it's 16 of them. So it's his entire, like, people he trained, he's been friends with, he led. They're all dead.
Yeah.
And Chaol blames himself, which is not, I mean, it's absolutely something that I believe Chaol would do. I don't think that it's fair that he blames himself and no one else in the group will blame him. But, like,
I mean, all those people too chose to work with him and chose to.
Well, that's, I think,
be a
what
part of
is
the rebel
hard
group too.
Is I don't even think that they were killed for being rebels, because all 16 of them were killed.
Yeah.
And, like,
it was definitely a message for him.
Yeah. We don't even have, like, knowledge about whether any of the other people were also rebels. And it's absolutely, like, 100% something the king would do, to just be like, well, you all used to work for Chaol, so I'm just going to kill you all just to get a Chaol.
Yep.
So,
this is when Chaol decides that the plan needs to change.
Yeah.
They had a plan going into this. I think my assumption is that the plan was they assumed the king knew who Aelin was, and she was going to try to just, like, pretend that she was capturing Chaol as Selena and hope for the best. At this point, this message is clearly not for Aelin. It is for Chaol, like 100%. So he takes it as, like, a very personal attack. And so he does not believe he's going to make it out of the castle. And I think they don't say exactly, like, what his plan is, like, what they're changing about it, but you get this gist that he does not plan on leaving the castle that day, which is very sad. Even though we give Chaol such a hard time, we still don't want him to die.
Yeah. The plan, he said, his voice shaking, we change it now. Chaol. He told her what he needed to do. When he finished, she wiped away her tears as she gripped his hand and said, I'll make it count. This is a personal writing note of mine that I hate. I hate when they do this, where they, like, tease something and then they're like, and X person informed the other character of what they were going to do, and then never tells the plan. I get that it's used as, like, a storytelling device to build tension. It still bugs me when they do it, though. It really bugs me. And it's something that she does. Well, she doesn't do it, like, extremely frequently, but I love Sarah J. Maas's writing so much, but at times it just feels lazy. It's like, is there another way that we could have written this where, like, it gets revealed that the plan was that changed, like, as we went, rather than just being like, that's when they changed the plan. The plan has changed. Cool. How did the plan change? What are we doing now? It's like, all right, great. Okay. What was the plan before? Like,
we were never told the full plan of, like, what.
It irks me.
We just kind of got this idea that she was using him as, like, bait almost.
Yeah.
To get in there. But, like,
and I think this is one of the only times that I can think of where she does it and it's not Aelin doing it. Because when Aelin does it, it makes sense to me that it almost makes sense as her character that, like, she would even keep it from me as the reader. Yeah. Because Aelin doesn't say shit about anything she's doing ever to anyone. So then, like, it kind of makes sense that, like, even in her head as a story writing aspect, that she'd be like, I made the decision to change my plan. And then doesn't even tell us as the reader what the fuck she's thinking about. But as a story writing thing, it's not my favorite thing on the planet.
Yeah.
If anyone can do it and me read through it and be like, I'm annoyed, but I don't care, I'm going to keep reading, it's Sarah J. Maas, because I don't care.
Yeah.
She could do miscommunication and I'd be like, whatever, sounds good. I'm reading it.
She pretty much has.
Yeah, she does. I don't know, but again, like hers, she does it well.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I agree.
That's my pet peeve, and I have no problem spoiling for you that it happens more now that we're in the back half of these books and plans are changing all the time. Mm-hmm. Every time I read it, I'm like, ugh, what was it? What was the plan? Okay. So they say something about the plan changing. The other thing that I think is interesting is this last section of this chapter. It says, now she led him in chains through the gates, an assassin one last time. Her walk became a swagger, and she moved with fluid ease towards the guards who drew their swords, their black rings gobbling up the sunlight. Selena Sardothian halted a healthy distance away and lifted her chin. Tell his majesty and that his champion has returned, and she brought him one hell of a prize. Great line, but also, all of the guards are wearing rings now.
Yes.
So it's like, we are no longer just like ruling out of fear. The king has complete control over the people that are working for him. Terrifying.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guards. There are, like, the castle is full of them. And all of the guards, I mean, we learned it even a little bit earlier too, where when we learned from one of the other encounters that they had, where they had said, like, the rings were part of the uniform now. Mm-hmm. Terrifying. So it's just a lot of people that have to die if they can't be healed and saved. So
yeah, not
so sad.
Not great. Not a good situation to walk into. Especially now too, because like the castle, she knew people in the castle at least. Like she knew enough to like get around certain things where people would like turn a blind eye. She has nobody on the inside at this moment. Because every single guard now is controlled in some manner.
Yeah. So they make it into the throne room. They see the king and Dorian's there, and we get a snippet of Dorian in his head. It's like their faces, it's described as their faces were tugging at him, like tugging at his memory, and then like the demon snaps at him and is like, nope, you see nothing.
You don't
These are
know
not
them.
The people you are looking for.
Their faces, they were faces that tugged at him, and like you said, just nothing.
Nothing.
Don't
the woman, he recognized that face as she yanked back her dark hood and knelt before the dais, and then the demon like snaps at him, and then he says, but their faces, he did not know those faces. He did not care.
Yeah.
So like every time he knows a little bit, and then the demon is like, get back in line, and then he forgets again. Terrifying.
Yeah, the same thing was happening too when he was like, Manon. Don't think of that name. And then he's like, who? Oh. Damn it.
So the king questions her as to why she's back. He questions like, well, I haven't heard about you being successful on your quest that I sent you on to kill the crown king and prince of Wendlin. She tricks him by bringing their seals, the seal rings of them. Still not 100% sure how she got those. probably just stole them.
I'm assuming Lysandra's jeweler made them.
Oh, no, you're right. It literally does say Lysandra's jeweler had yet again done a stunning job of recreating them. I forgot.
Lysandra's jeweler has made a lot of money in this book.
I hope so, because he's doing a great job. He or she is doing a fantastic job. But it's kind of all in vain, because he already knows who she is.
Yes.
So she brings Chaol, and then the king says, I do wonder, the king mused, leaning back on his throne, who has been conspiring more, the captain or you, champion? Or should I call you Aelin? Oh, shit! Oh, no!
He knows. That's not good.
So of course, right when stuff gets exciting in the throne room, we cut back to Aedion and Rowan in the dungeon.
Of course.
Yeah, because more tension building.
So, the king knows it's Aelin, and now we're back to Rowan and Aedion. Let's take a pause as we do. Exciting stuff starts, and then we say, tee we're gonna go over here now.
Haha.
Rowan and Aedion make it to the tower. Like we said, they start feeling like getting headaches from this, like getting close to the stone. The second they start like getting to the base of the tower, they both notice that their noses are bleeding. Mm-hmm. And it is like very strong against them compared to like when Aelin went up when she was Selena. Like she had a headache. Dorian also had a headache, and like they noticed it, but like neither of them started to like have like aggressive nosebleeds to the point where they felt like they were getting like pushed in on themselves.
It's like because their senses are heightened, it's affecting them more aggressively.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah, especially because they're Fae. They're supposed to be like light years stronger than human form.
But it almost has the opposite effect because it's like, I don't know, it just like affects them more aggressively because that magic is so strong.
Yeah. They describe it as being unbearable.
Yeah.
Where like Selena and Dorian, when they went that way through the library, they noticed it and it was always a throbbing pain, but it was never described as unbearable. So they're like, we got to get in and out. Rowan, of course, goes directly into his like warrior mode, and he is like, okay, Aedion, like, let's go. Like, let's move.
Action plan.
We're doing this. Like, we have to do this and this and this. And is like leader mode. Aedion, of course, also in pain, is like rolling his eyes like, yeah, dude, I've done this shit before. I'm also a like warrior. What do you mean? But he also like internally is like, I know he's just looking out for me. Like, I know he's trying to distract me from like what is currently happening to our bodies, because like they're depleting rapidly.
Yeah.
While they
have to set
space.
Both of the barrels up, and then they have to basically like they're attaching them with like a fuse, and then like running the fuse line out so that they can get a safe distance away to be able to like light the fuse and then have time to like escape while they go off. And while they're doing this, Rowan, something drips on his shoulder and he thinks that it's an ear bleed, and he like wipes it off. He's like, that's not blood. Oh god.
Yep.
And then they start hearing low growling noises in the passage, and they realize that Lorcan lied. Mm-hmm. He hadn't killed the remaining warhounds. He had just given them Rowan's scent from like the cloak that he had a piece of fabric from.
Yeah.
So now, of course, excitement. So we're gonna go back to Aelin.
Yeah. We set up for a bad interaction.
Yeah. And then we move away.
Let's do it again.
Yay!
So, yeah. We're left at they're starting to roll out this fuse. And they don't get it fully out before they're like interrupted by some wordhounds.
And their whole plan is hinging off of the fact that like Aelin and Chaol are basically just like get into the castle and then bide time until they can get the tower down so that she can use her magic. Without her magic, she's like so defenseless. So they're struggling in the tunnels, and we know that the king is like, you're not Selena, you're Aelin.
Yeah.
And I love her like response to this so much. It says, Aelin, Ash River Galathinius, faced the king of Otterlin. Selena, Lillian, Aelin, she drawled, I don't particularly care what you call me. We find out that he figured it out because he's able to see in Chaol's, or in Dorian's mind.
Yikes.
Not great.
Nope.
So that's kind of terrifying because he knows a lot. And it's probably how he knew that Chaol was a traitor. It's probably how he knew that, or like assumed that Russ and Brello at least would have followed him.
Mm-hmm.
He would have knowledge of Aedion also being a rebel. Just a lot.
Ren,
I think
everyone
minus, it's everything like minus Rowan, because Rowan happens after Dorian has already been taken.
Yeah.
So, yikes.
They pretty much like go back and forth. Aelin is full Selena in this moment. So she is very much like anytime the king asks a question, she retorts with a question. And he asks a question and she asks a question. And neither of them are answering anything.
Yeah, they're like talking about the word keys and like they're both trying to get information out of each other. And they're not going to give each other any of the information.
The king also flashes the fact that he has 2 onyx rings in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew they were going to show up. And his goal, or it is assumed that those 2 rings were for Chaol and Aelin. Or maybe Aelin and Aedion. Because maybe he assumed Aelin was going to show up with her cousin instead of Chaol. But either way, it's assumed that at least one of them was intended for her.
Yeah.
Which is not ideal. Luckily, she has, as we know, the green ring from Lorcan that hopefully, fingers crossed, actually works. Since we found out he lied about the word hounds, let's hope he didn't lie about the ring working.
She won't tell him anything. So rather than torturing her or Chaol, he has complete control over Dorian. So he tortures Dorian instead.
Yes.
He tells him to kneel, and he does. He, like, is in complete control of Dorian. And then, because he knows everything about her, he whips his son with his, like, darkness magic. He whips him multiple times. Dorian is crying, like, sobbing.
He's like writhing in pain, pretty much.
Yeah. And then it goes away. The king, like, pulls it all back into him and stops.
She does push back on him and says, he's your son, your heir. And he retorts, you forgot, princess, the king said, that I have 2 sons. So she's like, he's gonna kill him right here in front of us. That's not ideal. Not great. But yes, the king stops. And we believe it's because she flashes the eye of Elena that she's wearing. And the king notices it. In the moment, the king thinks that it could be the next word key. Like maybe it's in that necklace. Or he recognizes the eye of Elena for some reason. In some manner, he recognizes it. And it, of course, like semi-distracts him. He wants it.
Chaol also offers himself instead of Dorian. Well, he tells him to name his price. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'll give you anything. And the king kind of taunts back at him, would you hand over your former lover, captain? Referring to, like, Aelin. And she says, you came into my family's home and murdered them in their sleep, Aelin said. And the grandfather clock began chiming 12. A heartbeat later, the miserable, off-kilter clanging of the clock tower sounded. It's only fair, she said to the king, as she backed a step towards the doors, that I destroy you in return. This is when she tugs the Eye of Elena out of her suit, and the blue stone glowed like a small star. And the king says, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life, girl. And the clock tower still stands. They were trying to aim for noon, so she's, like, ready to do her big, like, and
magic
now. Yeah.
And I have magic.
But unfortunately, Lorcan fucks everything up. And now they're in trouble.
Yep.
So, again, we go back to Rowan and Aedion, because things are getting tense. And they are in a full-out battle against the Word Hounds. They are still in real bad shape, bleeding, horrific headaches, and they're having to fight off these Word Hounds because Aedion, like, while they're fighting, basically, like, drops the fuse, and they have basically been, like, pushed back a little bit. So now they have to fight back towards the Word Hounds to be able to get to the fuse to be able to, like, actually take the clock tower down. Like, they are in a very bad situation. Rowan is panicking because, of course, the woman that he has given his heart to pretty much is in deep shit if they don't get their shit together.
Yeah.
We flip back again to to Aelin and Chaol in the throne room. The king starts to send, like, his guards basically to, like, attack the two of them and get the eye. And Chaol is the one who gets ready to fight first.
Yeah, he, like, pulls his sword out.
Chaol lifted his sword, holding his position between the open doors and the conqueror of their continent. The king took another step. More heroic antics. Do you ever get bored of them, Captain? Chaol did not yield. You murdered my men, and Sorsha, and a good many more. Another step. The king stared over Chaol's shoulder to the hallway where Aelin and Dorian had vanished. It ends now. So he buys time for the two of them to run. Yeah. Aelin basically sprints out the door. Dorian chases her down.
Yeah, the king pretty much forces him to chase her down.
Yeah, Chaol stays behind to try to buy her as much time to get away so that they can take down the clock tower, and then she'll have a chance to actually fight them.
Yeah.
We get Dorian's perspective from within the demon, holding him, chasing after... Nope, sorry, it's not Dorian's perspective. I lied. It's her perspective. Dorian's chasing.
Yeah. Dorian is pretty much surging after her in a manner, and she is, like, steps in front of him. She does not have enough of a lead in front of him, and his ice is coating everywhere because
his magic is so powerful now.
Yeah. Pretty much he has his magic because of his, like, father's bloodline and how the magic, like, was tied to his father and how it was, like, cut off to everyone else except for him. Dorian, same bloodline, has magic, so his magic is still useful. And then with the demon inside of him, it's, like, doubly as strong as it probably would have been if the demon wasn't inside of him at the moment. And she goes up, and her goal is to get as high as possible and then out and across, like, through the landings. She is trying to, we learn, pull Dorian as far away from the king as possible with this.
She wants to create as much distance between realistically, like, her and the king, but also get Dorian as far away from the king as possible, because there's less chance that if the king has complete control over Dorian, like, she doesn't necessarily know how far that stretches, if it's, like, verbal and that kind of stuff, so distance is good.
Yeah. She pretty much is, like, running out. She jumps, like, through a window onto another glass bridge. Like, she's just out going from, like, tower to tower, running along the, like, outskirt part of the castle, is how it's described. Dorian, of course, breaks through a thing of glass, and glass shards are, like, thrown at her pretty much. So she gets glass in her back, which isn't great. Doesn't feel good. And so, but she has to keep running. So she just goes and goes and goes. She gets pretty much to, like, a dead end almost, and is cornered. And this is where we get Dorian's, like, a slight snippet of Dorian's, like, POV. In his mind, he just says he was going to kill her. Her face, though, that face. And it really is, he's like, it is, that sums up the demon saying, we are to kill her. Like, she is going to die. And then him internally still being like, but that face, like, what is it about that face? There's something about that face. Which is not a good time. We don't like that Dorian has this internal struggle. No. I just want him to recognize her.
I know. Dorian, she said, he did not know that name, and he was going to kill her.
Yeah, she tries the whole time. She does not want to kill her friend.
Nope. It's crazy to me how much more, like, from everything that you read, and from the last time that they had that conversation, it's like she has completely flipped. She will run and run and run. She will try to capture him and, like, subdue him. But now she's in a position where she's like, she cannot hurt him. And all he wants to do is hurt her.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that flips her is that note. I really think it's Manon's, like...
It does. Like, she knows that he's there now.
Yeah, she can't do it now.
She can't do it.
Which is hard, because she
depressing.
Says to Chaol, if you can't do it, you tell me and I will. Yeah. Like, I'll take the brunt of that so you don't have to kill your friend. And now
but it's now like... both of them can't do it because they know that there's a chance.
Yeah, it's hard.
But at the same time, like, you still think back to the conversation that Nesryn had with Chaol of, like, if he's not savable, then he can't be put in charge. He has to go.
Yeah.
We flip back to Chaol and his final stand with the king. The king kept approaching, and Chaol had held his sword before him, not yielding one step. For rest, for Brello, for Sorsha, for Dorian, for Aelin, for Aedion, and their family, for the thousands massacred in those labor camps, and for Nesryn, who he lied to, who waited for a return that wouldn't come, for time they wouldn't have together. He had no regrets but that one. Ugh. You lost, Chaol panted. The blood was flaking away beneath his clothes, itching. Your wards are failing, boy. Chaol smiled, tasting blood in his mouth. Good thing steel lasts longer. The sun through the windows warmed Chaol's back, as if in an embrace, as if in comfort, as if to tell him it was time. I'll make it count, Aelin had promised him. He had bought her time. A wave of black reared up behind the king, sucking the light out of the room. Chaol spread his arms wide as the darkness hit him, shattered him, obliterated him until there was nothing but light, burning blue light, warm and welcoming. Aelin and Dorian had gotten away. It was enough. When the pain came, he was not afraid.
Chaol making his final stand.
We flip back to Aelin now.
Yep, they're still fighting. So all of these things are happening at the same time, which is, there's a lot going on.
She's trying to bring him back to like reality. She's using Chaol's name. She's using Sorsha's name. Aelin began weeping even as blood leaked down her nose from his nearness. I came back for you just like I promised. A dagger of ice appeared in his hand, its lethal tip glinting like a star in the sunlight. I don't care, Dorian said. She shoved her hand in between them as if she could push him away, grabbing one of his own hands tight. His skin was so cold as he used the other to plunge the knife into her side. Now we flip to Rowan.
Yep, Aelin gets stabbed. Now let's go see what's going on with Aedion and Rowan.
Spoiler, things aren't fucking good down there either.
Nope. We have pretty much 3 word hounds remain. They've gotten through there were 6 or 7?
Yep. Something
and
like
now
that.
They're down to 3.
Too many.
So they did a decent amount of damage. However, Rowan and Aedion have both lost a lot of blood. They're not doing well. Aedion is struggling. He's really trying to just get back to the fuse. Rowan is trying to protect Aedion as well, standing in front of him, trying to take the hit a lot of the times. They're not doing well. They're 2 warriors who are near death is the way it's described to you. In the book.
They start driving the 2 of them apart too, fighting to separate them. And then
it's
Rowan
2 on Rowan and 1 on Aedion the whole time.
Rowan gets bit by one, and then Lorcan shows up to save them.
Lorcan, the reason they exist in the first place, shows up to, I didn't know.
Look,
bad.
Here, I made a mistake, guys, but I'm back. I'm gonna fix it. Just back at the last possible second. You shit. But he does help. He's able to get them kind of back and helps them get...
Yeah, Lorcan pretty much fights the last 3 word hounds on his own.
He's able to fight them off. And then he feels the pain in his side from where Aelin's been stabbed.
Yeah.
Because they are Karanon, which means that they can feel each other's pain.
Yep.
And
his
he
knees
starts
buckle
panicking.
in pain.
Yep.
And he notices that he's not injured on his side.
Mm-hmm.
So someone else must be.
So they start panicking, and now the need to get the tower down is extremely intense. So they, with Lurkin's help, they're able to get the fuse, get as far away as they deem safe, while also being okay, we have to do this right now. And they are able to light the fuse and blow up the clock tower.
Yes.
The tunnel
goes boom.
shook. The world shook. Ceilings came crashing down.
However, when the dust settled around them, there were 100 Vold commanders on the opposite side. So they pretty much go into the tunnel to bring down the tower. Tower comes down. So does a bunch of rubble. They gotta exit the opposite direction. In that opposite direction is at least 100 Vold commanders. And Rowan and Aedion are still not doing great. Granted, they're hopefully about to have their magic back because the tower's coming down. But that's that. All right, let's go see what Manon and Astrid are doing now.
Yep. Manon and Astrid feel it.
Yep.
They feel the wave of magic come back. They're all very excited about it. And they all feel, even Abraxos feels it, which is cool. The dragon, or the wyverns can feel the magic come back.
Manon feels it, Astrid feels it, kind of all the witches start to stir. And then we get a small little snippet. Kaltain feels the magic being freed as well. We love Kaltain.
We do now.
Yeah.
We have for the last book and a half at least.
Yes. So this gives you the idea that like everyone is going to start getting their magic back or feel it come back in some manner, even all the way out in Morath where the witches are.
Aelin feels it.
Yes.
As we go back to Aelin's perspective, she feels the magic come back. The sun is starting to creep around the tower. So another little reminder that the other reason that they're doing it at this time of day is because she's going to be like have the most power during the time that the day is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the sun goes down, she will start to not lose her power, but like she will become less powerful. So she is on the clock, just like everybody else. She like is pleading with Dorian, trying to get him to remember, trying to get closer to him. We get to come back, Aelin said, pushing her hand harder and harder into her wound until the blood stopped, until it was only her tears that flowed. Dorian, we get to come back from this loss, this darkness. We get to come back, and I came back for you. She was weeping now, weeping as the wind faded away and her wounds knitted closed. The prince's dagger had gone slack in his hands, and on his finger Athrel's golden ring glowed. Fight it, she panted, the sun angled closer. Fight it, we get to come back. Brighter and brighter, the golden ring pulsed at his finger.
And then he remembers her.
The demon is pissed. He's like growling, calling her a human worm, telling her to take it off of him. And where does it actually say? Oh, here we go. Take it off. Ice grew, spreading towards her, fast as the rays of sunshine that now shot between the towers, refracting across every glass parapet and bridge, filling the castle with Mala Firebringer's glorious light. The bridge, this bridge that she and Chaol had selected for this purpose, for this one moment at the apex of the solstice, was smack in the middle of it. The light hit her, and it filled her heart with the force of an expanding star. With a roar, the Vogue prince sent a wave of ice for her, spears and lances aimed at her chest. So Aelin flung her hands towards the prince, towards her friend, and hurled her magic at him with everything she had.
So Dorian remembers Selena. Like, Yay. The big thing was that he recognized her face and her eyes. As he... a cracked doorway, remember. Over the demon screaming, he pushed and looked out through his eyes, and saw Selena Sardathian standing before him.
Yay!
So Dorian is back, sorta. He still has the demon inside of him. But he has a bit more strength. He can fight against the demon. On top of it, Aelin is also somehow routing her magic into Dorian in a way that it is only affecting the demon.
She's like burning the demon out of him.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Fantastic.
Lovely.
Yeah. And Dorian recognizes this time. What was that?
I said good things are happening this time.
Yes.
Before we change perspective for the 9 millionth time.
Yeah, now we're going back to Rowan and Aedion and Lorcan, and Rowan is barely conscious, which is great, especially when there's all these Vogue soldiers now existing. They, not like Aelin, who has the sun to help her and charge her magic, they just get their magic back. So as we learned in Mistward, they have to like charge up their power to be able to like fight and actually use it. Like Rowan is a very powerful fae and like is always kind of strong, but at this point, because he's trying to use his magic to not die, he is trying to use it in both, like in tandem of like heal the things that need to be healed so I don't bleed out, but also like fight the hundreds of Vogue that are right in front of us now. Lorcan is fighting through the soldiers. Aedion is doing his best. Like, Aedion believes they're gonna die at this point, and pretty much says to Rowan, "It's been an honor, Prince."
They're trying to buy time.
Yeah.
And like just
they're doing their best.
Stay alive for as long as possible and bide time until they die.
Yeah. Lorcan disappears through the crowd somehow. Like, he fights his way through and then gets to the other end. And that's when Aedion also notices, like, well, he helped us with the word hounds, but now he's gone. And he's just abandoned us, which isn't great. So, like, he did something shitty, came back and was like, just kidding, I feel bad, came back. Just kidding, I'm leaving again. And you're like,
well, it definitely,
okay.
I think it reads more like that he's engulfed by soldiers and taken out of light, because it does say that soldiers went down and did not rise, but that his magic had like started failing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with a grunt of pain, Lorcan was engulfed by half a dozen soldiers and shoved out of sight into the blackness.
Yeah.
So I think we're meant to think that he dies, but Lorcan's too fucking slippery, so there's no fucking way.
Yeah. I did not take it as he died. I took it as he somehow made it out of the...
Yeah, because he's Lorcan and he can get out of any situation. But also the engulfed by half a dozen soldiers doesn't read great, but it's Lorcan, so he can fucking get out of it. He'll be fine. Yeah, they look at each other. Aedion and Rowan kind of look at each other, realizing that they're going to die. And then...
Yeah, Aedion has the thought, Lorcan, that selfish prick, must have cut a path through them after all and run.
Oh, there you go.
I was like, there's definitely a reason I thought that. I didn't just like make it up. It's like, if I thought that, I don't think my brain was that good.
Yeah. I don't think my brain was that good.
I couldn't have
You're
figured
pretty
that
smart,
out.
but don't give yourself credit, I guess. Yeah, they're realizing that they're probably going to die. And then they hear some commotion behind them. And right as Aedion is about to be killed by one of the commanders, it was ripped clean off by a ghost leopard.
At first, my brain went, okay, Lorcan just went and transferred. Like, he now has his magic, so he went back, got like a second, and became his like beast. And then I went, wait a minute, Lorcan's not the cat. The cat is the other one. The cat is the one that is Aedion's father. And then I was like, wait, ghost leopard? Why is there a ghost leopard? And then we find out because Lysandra decided her power came back, so she was like, sick, I could be a ghost leopard now. Let's go.
She made it halfway across the city before she got out of that carriage, told Evangeline to take it all the way to the Felix country house to be a good girl and stay safe. Lysandra had sprinted 2 blocks towards the castle, not caring if she had little to offer them in the fight, when the wind slammed into her and a wild song sparked in her blood. She shed her human skin, that mortal cage, and ran, tracking the scent of her friends. Yeah!
And then she killed all of the soldiers.
Because she is a badass fucking bitch.
We love
Lysandra. I love her. She is one of my favorite characters in this entire goddamn series. And this scene is so fucking good.
It is.
People screamed at the ghost leopard that shot down the street, sleek as an arrow, dodging whinnying horses and carriages. She sees the flyer explode from the castle, so like it's like basically her like thing with where she shoots her fire at Dorian and like realizes that Aelin is still alive and fighting. She's like tracked the guys down into the sewers to be able to help them. She gets saved by Nezrin Falik,
Mm-hmm.
She's like sprinting towards the castle and she like does not give a shit. Like arrows are pointed at her. She knows she's not going to be able to like make it out most likely. She dodges one arrow and then another arrow that's going directly at her gets shot out of the air because Nezrin is also a badass bitch. They're so cool. And that gets knocked out of the air. Lysandra can like make it to safety to go and help the guys. Oh, so cool. She gets sent to the palace by the guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, she then looks over at Aedion and Rowan, and Rowan is like, you have to go to Aelin, like, now. Like, he pretty much just says, like, Aelin. And she's like, got it. She fucking books it out of the sewer and is like, all right, I'm going to her now. We did this. You're good? Cool. Next.
Gotta go. And then we flip to Aelin.
Mm-hmm. Aelin's not doing great at this
Aelin's
point.
not doing great, and Dorian still does not have complete control over his body.
Yes. Well, that, and then the king also decides he wants to show up now, because...
Yeah, because now's a good time for just everything to hit the fan all at the same goddamn time. The king shows up. Dorian is trying to get control of his body. She questions the king about what happened to Chaol. She accuses him of killing him. And he says the boy didn't even land a single blow. He smirked at the sword of Orinth, which he takes from Chaol, because that's the sword that he had to fight him. And he says, I doubt you will either. Dorian went silent. Aelin snapped, you killed him. My one regret, the king said to her, is that I did not get to take my time. I will take my time with you, though. What did you say? Dorian. The voice was hoarse, broken. The king and Aelin both turned towards the prince, but Dorian's eyes were on his father, and they were burning like stars. What did you say? About Chaol. The king snapped. Silence. Did you kill him? Not a question. Aelin's lips began trembling, and she tunneled down, down, down inside herself. And if I did, the king said, brows high, did you kill Chaol? The light at Dorian's hand burned and burned, but the collar remained around his neck. You, the king snapped, and Aelin realized he meant her, just as a spear of darkness shot for her, so fast, too fast. The darkness shattered against a wall of ice.
Dorian's back, baby.
Dorian's back!
Hell yeah.
The tears were running down Aelin's face as Dorian gripped the black stone encircling his throat, and bellowing his grief and rage, his pain, he snapped the collar from his neck.
The first thing that happens, his internal dialogue is Dorian. His name was Dorian Havillard, and he was the crown prince of Otterlin. And Selena Sardathian, Aelin Galathinius, his friend, she had come back for him.
My heart.
Of course, the demon was like, no, don't do that. But he breaks his collar anyway. He's like, teehee, just kidding. Get out of me, demon. Be gone.
I think we're done listening to the demon. Thank you, though.
Yeah, we're done with you. We're good. Send him back to wherever he goes when that breaks. Hopefully he's gone. Don't know. But it's fine. Just
don't know.
Send him back to somewhere. They, of course, run to each other. And the king is not having it. The king is not thrilled. And he pretty much was like, I'm going to kill both of them.
Yeah, he threatens them. Neither of you are leaving here alive.
Mm-hmm. But they join hands. And they start to glow. And their magic, like, entwines together, which is wild and kind of suspected. that their magic would play nice to each other because of how all of our backstory and then like the reaction that she had to Dorian in like their first meetings. I think one of the things that I said was that there's some kind of mate situation that she had a reaction to when she met Chaol and Dorian at Endovier, like when they showed up. There was some like reaction internally to her. Now I'm realizing that it wasn't necessarily mate related, but it was probably magic related, and that their magic is like tied to each other in some
because
manner.
It's actually related.
Yeah.
Because they both come from the same magic line. Because it's Elena. Elena is tied to Aelin, like her brother's kid, basically. And then Elena is from Dorian's direct line.
Yeah.
So cool! They joined hands, and so the world ended, and the next one began. The writing is so good!
The king struck for them, and they like erupted in light, is how it's described. They were infinite. They were the beginning and the ending. They were eternity.
So cool.
Let's go see what's happening with Rowan now.
Yeah, so now we gotta go see if Rowan's dead. Because
Aedion, Rowan, and Lorcan.
Rowan's fine.
So this is the thing that confused me. Lorcan vanished and then now he's back?
Yeah, I don't... He must not have, like, left. Like,
yeah,
he might have just been like, I'm trying to clear a path to get out, but then got separated from them. It definitely made it seem like I completely was bought into the, like, great, fuck you, Lorcan, you selfish...
Yeah, dick. Immediately. And then I'm like, wait a minute, he's back again? Soldiers had infiltrated the sewers again, even after Lysandra had saved their sorry asses. Lorcan had rushed back, bloodied, and told them the way out was barred, and whatever way Lysandra had gotten in was now overrun. So they didn't have a way out. So Rowan is like, I need to get to Aelin yesterday. So let's go the way that we originally went in. Aedion, Rowan, Lorcan are digging their way out of the cave. Pretty much they're going back towards the castle now instead of turning around and trying to get out of the sewers.
Yeah.
They're just going to go from the sewers. They get through one section. They get to the next. Rowan at this point is like, I can't wait anymore. Like, we can't do this. There's a hole that's big enough, and he changes into his hawk form and he flies through it. He's like, my fae form can't go through that hole, but a hawk can, so see ya. And he books it. He leaves Aedion and Lorcan to like continue digging their way through. He's like, I'm going. I need to get to Aelin at this point. He flies up.
He sees the explosion.
Yeah.
Like, as it happens.
He sees that kind of eruption of Dorian and Aelin holding hands and kind of their power. And he is in awe. Like, he cannot believe what he's seeing. He has this moment of Aelin is alive. As he rounded the corner of the castle, he had no words for what he saw. He was just grateful she's alive. Yep. And then, holy shit, what's happening? So, we learn that their combined power pretty much breaks whatever is within the king. Whatever demon is controlling the king, his power, like, pretty much breaks. And the king, like, falls to his knees. We find out, big left turn, that the king was in a very similar scenario to Dorian. And he was being controlled by a demon as well.
Have you come to save me at last, Aelin Galathinius?
Yes.
Excuse me, what?
I wrote, what the actual fuck?
Yep.
Because
this really like blew my mind. Like, it threw me. when that was like revealed, because I was like, oh damn, like part of me was like, oh, I could have, that makes sense though, because everyone else is fucking taken over by someone else, so of course no one would be who they actually are.
Yes.
Which is wild. And he describes how they got into this situation in the first place.
Yeah. The ring on the king's finger broke. More and more human he began to look. You're just like, oh, fuck. He also starts to, like, age. I think it's described that he starts, like, aging and he looks, like, weathered. And you're like, oh, no shit. This demon was pretty much, like, controlling his body, I guess. He pleads with his son to, like, kind of forgive him. Like, he pleads with Dorian.
Yeah. I mean, he explains what happened.
Yeah.
So, like, he tries to explain that him and Parrington found the key and had taken it to Morath, and that they found the keep below with the crypt. And then they opened it. And he came. He took Parrington's body, and he let his minion take me. And Aelin realizes that Erawan is actually free.
Yes.
And that this whole time, Erawan, the Dark King, has been Parrington. And that the king has basically just been, like, Erawan's decoy of, if I make him the big bad, like, make him look like the big bad, then I can go off to Morath and do my own thing, kind of whatever. Because people will focus on the king being in Rifthold.
Yes.
Genius. Horrifying, though. So,
we also realize
the two of them don't notice who each other is through the entire time that Erawan's just chilling and Aelin's just chilling, because Erawan is weak when he is in, like, Parrington's body. Like, he doesn't have his full power, like, his full magic.
It's noted that he has to kind of, like, to be able to take over a human body without destroying it very quickly, he has to, like, sit in the background.
Yeah.
As, so like, we get the idea of, like,
some of his power.
Yeah, we get the idea of, like, when the Vogue Prince takes over Dorian, he's at the forefront. When the king was taken over, the demon was at the forefront and the king was in, like, the background. In the scenario of Parrington, we get the idea that, like, the demon is in there and, like, manipulating Parrington enough to make him do all the things he wants him to do, but has to sit so far in the back so that he doesn't destroy, like, the vessel that he's in, pretty much.
They mentioned
because
he can
Parrington
hide,
doesn't, like, have magic.
He can hide inside a body like a snail in its shell, but cloaking his presence stifles his own ability to send others.
Yeah.
But now that they're back, he basically mentions that, like, he hated the Galathinius and the Havaliard line, which is why the two, like, those two families specifically were targeted, because Erawan, that's the line that trapped him in the first place.
Yeah.
Which is why when he came back, he came for Aelin's family and he came for Dorian's family.
You also learned that, like, why the king had a reaction to the Eye of Elena. And he pretty much says, the eye, you could have sealed him back with the eye. So it wasn't the king's reaction. Like, we get the idea that the king had a reaction because it could be, like, a word stone or, like, a word key. But it's actually, he saw it as, like, a salvation. He saw it, we could trap Erawan, finally, and, like, go back. Because in this whole thing, he's pretty much confessing that he's been trying to fight against the demon inside of him. He's been trying to fight against Parrington this whole time, but without, like, trying to go, like, unnoticed. Similar, the
king was the one that was able to get the towers built.
Yeah,
he was.
So he built that on purpose.
Had the towers built, and was able to keep from Erawan how and why they were built. Erawan basically was able to trick him into thinking that magic being gone was some sort of punishment from the gods.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his way of protecting Dorian from Erewhon, is like magic being eradicated from like this area of the kingdom.
Yeah, you learn that he didn't erect the towers so that he could control places. He did it as like a protection measure too, because no one had magic then in this like triangle of location, including like we don't know if Parrington had magic in his bloodline. Like Erewhon has taken over this body.
Yeah.
Like he could have extra power if the person he's like inside also has magic. Like it pretty much, his idea was like, I'm trying to protect my people and protect people by building these. Granted, it then caused a lot of people to die. It's pretty Chaol coded, but that's fine.
Chaol coded. He also says that he is the one that had them go to find Aelin.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he came to find her because he thought that she would be the only one that would be able to burn the demon out of him. So, like, she basically says, like, you're lying. Like, Dorian is, like, they don't believe him, basically, like, telling him that he's a liar this whole time. And he said that he came to find her to have it burned out of him. He tried to get to her, but that was basically when, like, her mother knocked her unconscious and, like, took her away because she was having such a bad reaction to what the king was trying to do to her. But the king was basically saying he was trying to do it to get a reaction out of Aelin to have her fight back.
Yeah. He was hoping to die in that scenario, pretty much.
And then he reveals that Chaol is alive.
Mm-hmm.
Broken, but I didn't make the kill. There was a light around him. I left him alive. Dorian screams, "You're a liar, and you deserve this." Aelin mouthed his name, trying to reel herself back in, gather her wits. The demon inside the king had hunted her not because of the threat Terabitson posed, but for the fire in her veins. The fire that could end them both. She lifted a hand as Dorian stepped towards his father. They had to ask, learn more. The crown prince tipped his head back to the sky and roared, and it was the battle cry of a god. And then the glass castle shattered.
All of it.
Dorian unleashes all of his fire, all of his power. The bridge, like, explodes, and Aelin starts falling. She flung out her magic in a cocoon, burning through the glass as she fell and fell and fell. Dorian basically blows up the glass castle, and the shards of glass go, like, out.
Yeah, in like a circle.
Towards the town and towards, like, the people that live there. And then Aelin basically uses her fire in a, like, last-ditch effort to protect everyone from the glass shards.
She does what, like, pretty much she did to
them.
Mistward, and just makes a ring around where the castle, like, boundary is to block it out from whatever. And then, like you said, it melts the glass and creates this, like, glass wall around where the castle once stood.
Yep. Wave after wave of glass and debris slammed into her wildfire, but she kept that wall of flame burning for the royal theater and the flower girls at the market, for the slaves and the courtesans and the Philippe family, for the city that had offered her joy and pain, death and rebirth, for the city that had given her music. Aelin kept the wall of fire burning bright.
She also realized that she's, like, not falling quickly.
Yeah.
And we get this, like, we don't know that it's Rowan exactly, but we know it's Rowan because his power's all wind related. So, like, he slows their descent to the ground as much as he can from where he is. as he sees this all like taking place.
Yeah. And then she loses consciousness.
Yes.
But not for very long. Basically, when she comes back, she sees what Dorian had done, that the glass castle is gone, that only, like, the stone remnants of the castle were what was left. And now the wall of glass, basically, that is, like, surrounding the area that she has created with her wildfire. Like, the wall of wildfire has now created, like, a wall of glass that surrounds the impact zone, pretty much.
Yeah.
The king is dead, and Dorian is also passed out because he used too much of his magic and then lost consciousness.
Chaol's also there on the ground near them when she wakes up too, which is like, oh, thank God. Okay, so we have Chaol's alive.
Chaol's alive because Aelin had slipped the Eye of Elena into his pocket before she fucking left the throne room.
Yep.
God damn it.
Which protected him from the demon. God. So instead of, you know, him dying, he just had his spine a little broken. That's fine.
Rowan arrives, and then she also sees Aedion and Lysandra. She basically sees that all of her friends are alive and well, although
maybe not well,
battered and bruised. Well, they're alive and alive. That's it. She basically, like, gets to the bottom of the hill to, like, the edge of the glass. She forms like a gate, just
she
fire.
Punched a battering ram of blue flame through it to make a like gate. She's just like, she had to do it with style, not just like, let's just melt this down a little. She just boom, punched a hole through.
She has a flourish. Okay.
Yeah.
The gallows stood still just beyond the wall. It was the only raised surface she could see. Better than nothing. Aelin ascended the butchering block, her court falling into rank behind her. Rowan was limping, but she didn't allow herself to examine him, to even ask if he was all right. Not yet. Aelin kept her shoulders back, her face grave and unyielding as she stopped at the center of the platform. Your king is dead, she said. The crowd stirred. Your prince lives. All hail Dorian Havaliert, someone shouted down the street. No one else echoes it. My name is Aelin Ashriver Galathinius, and I am the Queen of Terrasen. The crowd murmured, some onlookers stepping away from the platform. Your prince is in mourning. Until he is ready, this city is mine. Absolute silence. If you loot, if you riot, if you cause one lick of trouble, she said, looking a few in the eye, I will find you and I will burn you to ash. She lifted a hand and flames danced at her fingertips. If you revolt against your new king, if you try to take his castle, then this wall, she gestures with her burning hand, will turn to molten glass and flood your streets, your homes, your throats. I killed your king. His empire is over. Your slaves are now free people. If I catch you holding onto your slaves, if I hear of any household keeping them captive, you are dead. If I hear of you whipping a slave or trying to sell one, you are dead. So I suggest that you tell your friends, families, and neighbors. I suggest that you act like reasonable, intelligent people, and I suggest that you stay on your best behavior until your king is ready to greet you. At which time, I swear on my crown that I will yield control of this city to him. If anyone has a problem with it, you can take it up with my court. She motioned behind her. Rowan, Aedion, Lysandra. Bloodied, battered, filthy, grinning like hellions. Or, Aelin said, the flames winking out at her hand. You can take it up with me. And then she was barely inside the oak doors before she collapsed to her knees and wept.
So that was eventful. A lot of things happened.
We're still not done.
Nope, because guess who we haven't talked about in quite some time?
Hey, do you remember that girl Elide that was in the dungeon and shit looked really bad? She's still in a dungeon and shit looks really bad still. So
yep. So, you know, Elide also noticed the change in the environment. She pretty much, it's noted that she felt the air shift. And that was when power came back, or magic came back.
Yeah.
During this time, like moments later, of course, Vernon decided now's a great time to visit Aelin.
Mm-hmm.
He is like, all right, well, magic's back, so you're going to be useful now, finally. And so he pretty much says to her, you're going to come with me tomorrow, and we're going to test your magic. He also kind of talks, I don't know if he necessarily says it per se, but he alludes to her going down to where the yellow legs are. And talks about how her bloodline being mixed with the witches and mixed with magic would be probably more powerful and more
she's
sought
the perfect
upon.
She's the perfect baby maker.
Yep.
It's horrifying.
Vernon now is like, now I can deliver you to my king, Parrington. But let's see like what your body can do first. And this also confused me. The like addition of Cormac confused me.
Yeah.
Because he just shows up. He was like one of the guards that then got a ring and now has a demon in him. And he shows up in this encounter. And it's said that Cormac is now her betrothed. And I'm like, the fuck? What?
I thought Cormac was another one of like Dorian's cousins.
I don't remember. I don't know who he is.
Sorry, Cormac. Hold on, let me Google it real quick because I feel like it is important. I thought that he was another one of his cousins. Hold on.
I remember him coming up at some point and being
Cormac became acquainted with Arabin Hamel and went into business with him, becoming one of his investors and clients. Wait, this is
Cormac
the guy
is who
that
she pretends to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they captured him. Wait,
but I still don't quite remember how he, like, who he is other than that.
He was working with Arabin. She double-crossed Arabin by pretending to be Cormac. Cormac then gets captured by the king. That's part of Arabin's, like, last stand. He, like, when they're at the dinner, he says how, like, well, now he's taken and I've lost my connection.
So he was taken by the king. Like, he is like a noble, though, right?
I think so. He's like a lord or something. He's
got to be like in the court or something, because that would be why Arabin had him like of importance to like have that business relationship with him.
Yeah. Okay. They like joint owned the carriages and like owned a bunch of things. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I forgot why he was important. But right. Yeah.
Cormac. So, sorry, Cormac.
He's under Parrington's control. Now we've put together that it only took us reading about him and forgetting who he was.
There's a lot of characters in this series, okay?
Yeah.
We're allowed to forget a couple.
So Vernon calls Cormac in and
it's just he starts like and like just scare the shit out of her. That's all he cares about. It's that
Cormac starts using his like darkness on her, and Vernon has to tell him to like reel it in. Like, don't do that. She won't be any fun tomorrow if you do that. But he's pretty much saying like the demon prince that's in Cormac is going to get a lead. Like this will be your prize. Which is not great. We don't love that for a lead.
We really hate it a lot. Manon finally arrives back. She realizes that a lead has not been around for a while. Mm-hmm. Basically, like, the lack of her scent is what she like, starts panicking about.
Yeah, Aelin was staying in Manon's, like, quarters, and she noticed that her area was, like, clean and tidy and unused.
Yeah. She can't find her in any of the places that she should be. and she remembers Caltaine mentioning that they want kings. And she kind of like very quickly puts the pieces together of like what has happened. So she goes to find her. She looks in the kitchens. She looks in the laundry. She cannot find her. And then she goes straight to like the 13 and basically gets like the 13 to be like, all right, we're going to go find her now.
One of the laundresses seek her out though, like later. Yeah. So she went into like the laundry area and was like, where is she? They said like sometimes she works in another, like in the kitchen, like is pretty much like pushing Manon in a bunch of different directions. And then one of the laundresses finds her and says, one of our laundresses sees a guard who works in the keep dungeons. She said that Aelid's locked up down there. No one's allowed in but her uncle. Don't know what they're planning to do, but it can't be good. She pretty much is like, what dungeons? She didn't know. And then she pretty much says there's 3 possible dungeons she could be in. And Manon is like, thank you. Or Manon doesn't say that. Pretty much she says like, tell no one you spoke to me. And then the laundress says, wing leader, thank you. Which like, in Manon, like it takes her a step back because this is like one of the first things she's doing, not necessarily for herself.
She didn't let herself think about the laundress's gratitude or what it meant for those weak, helpless humans to have even considered trying to rescue a lead on their own.
Yes.
Because she also, the laundress basically mentions like that some of the girls were trying to figure out if there was anything that they could do to like try to help her. And it was basically just like because she was in the dungeons and there was just no way that they were going to be able to get to her. And like Manon recognizes how like these people that she thinks are like so weak and spineless and like worms were going to risk their lives to try to get a lead out. This smells like character growth to me.
You love it.
So she goes to find the 13 because there's 3 different dungeons that it could be, and she's like, I can't do this by myself.
They take off. So that's where we're left. They take off to go look for a lead. Pivot.
And then we flip back to a lead's perspective, and it's like she's been taken, she's been like washed and cleaned and like dressed in this like
robe, almost
like robe basically, and it's like being dragged to wherever they're one of the cells, I think, in the catacombs.
Yeah, it's noted that when she was, it was noted that when they put the robe on her that like they didn't give her undergarments. Like it was one thing she had noticed and she felt like very like vulnerable, obviously.
So she's being dragged out and like Manon hears her screaming. And Manon comes in and says, "You're all dead men." And then she moved. Doesn't take very long for her to kill them all.
Nope. Well, there's 4. And she has magic now. She has her power back pretty much. So she was strong without it. By God, she's probably 3 times stronger with it, if not more. She gets to the lead and pretty much is like, we need to run. She also, it's noted like in her internal dialogue too, that she noticed the 2 men that were like laughing at a lead, which I think is just like such a powerful thing for Manon to like recognize that and was like, because you're laughing, you're dying first. And it was just like her hand just goes through his neck. Just like, goodbye. You deserve to die now. An iron-tipped hand ripped through them.
Very good.
Aelid's internal dialogue too, like the whole time she's in the dungeons is like, no one cares about me. No one's going to come for me. And then you find out that like the laundresses were trying to get her.
Yep.
Manon is coming for her. It just...
There are
Manon
people
was gone.
Lead.
Yeah. So she's like, you came for me.
Yeah.
Manon tore through all 3 dungeons, like with her 13. There is a note in this that is a big tipping point for her as a character. And it's written that not one more female would she allow them to take. The voice inside Manon told her to be faster, a goddess peering over her shoulder. It's just like something is pushing Manon to like do the right thing outside of what she's just been trained to do her entire life. She's also fighting this internal the conflict from the Kraken witch too, where she was like, you were made you were made to be this like monster. They have made you into monsters, made Manon, and we feel sorry for you. And that's like one of the things that's always replayed in her head since she had to kill the Kraken witch too. There's just so much Manon development in this like one little spot.
Yeah. I mean, she recognizes that what she's feeling was regret.
Mm-hmm.
She recognizes that, like, she regretted killing the Kraken. She felt regret, guilt, and shame for, like, Asterin not being worthy of the trust. And then she regrets and feels guilty for what's been happening to the Yellowlegs. Yeah. And that's not an emotion that's built into them.
No. Brutality, so, discipline, and obedience.
Huge character growth. It's also mentioned in this that they learn about the news of Aelin and Dorian having killed the king, and that they've, like, the glass castle's been destroyed, so, like, all of that information has made it to them now, and it, like, makes it even more important that she save Aelin and protect Aelin, because she knows how important Aelin is, I think, like, to the court, and also, like, in whatever Parrington's plan is. She, like, realizes how powerful she could be for Parrington to have.
Mm-hmm. Her saving Aelin feels like the life debt to me over the message to Dorian.
True. Well, partially, yeah. Like, I feel like her
think the
saving
message
her
was, like,
isn't so much the life debt. I think her saving her feels more like her finally caring about someone else who isn't necessarily a witch. Like, I feel like the whole time that Manon's, like, protecting Aelin, she's using the fact that, like, she's half witch or whatever as her, like, excuse as to why it's okay that she feels this way and that she wants to protect Aelin. And then I think it just becomes more apparent that it's like, yeah, you can care about people that aren't witches. Actually, you can just care, period, even about your own witches. Like, that's an all right thing to do.
It's allowed.
I think because later, like, as they escape, they, like, kind of make it out, and Manon kind of tells Aelin that she has to go back to, like, find Aelin. That, to me, is the moment that is, like, the other part of the life debt, is, like, getting Aelin to go and find Aelin, and that court is that other part.
Yeah.
I just think that, I mean, she can that's probably another way that she justifies it, is like, I'll save Aelin because it's part of the life debt. But I really think that it's just, she uses all of these excuses to be like, yeah, sure. That's why I have to, not because I just want to and I actually give a shit about her.
Yeah. Much.
But as they're making the rest of their escape, they, like, run into Caltaine on the way.
Yes.
Out.
It is noted. Manon says to Aelin, we're going to have to battle our way out. But the girl was wide-eyed, gaping at the cell doorway. Standing there, her dress flowing around her like liquid night, was Caltaine. Yes. Just another badass bitch. Showing up when she needs to show up.
This is the coolest scene in the whole book.
Yep.
It's just fabulous. It is chapter 82. If anyone is like listening to our podcast because, you know, you don't have time to read the books and you want to listen and like know what all the hype is about, I would still 100% recommend like to read these books. But God, chapter 82 is just a masterpiece. It's so good. Manon asks Kaltain, how long has it been since you destroyed the demon inside that collar, Kaltain? A low, broken laugh. A while. Does the Duke know? My dark liege sees what he wants to see. She shifted her eyes to Aelin. Exhaustion, emptiness, sorrow, and rage dance there together. Remove your robe and give it to me. So she's going to trick them. Mm-hmm. Kaltain's plan is to take Aelid's robe, switch clothes with her, basically, and go to the wedding, basically, because that's what she's supposed to go down there for, and pretend to be Aelid, so that Aelid and Manon can escape.
Yeah.
Aelid is like, this is insane, it'll never work. And Manon is like, do exactly what she says.
Kaltain also does this, like, they see what they want to see. Yeah. Like, she's been manipulating them for so long that, like, she is pretty much gotten to the point of, like, she's powerful enough that she can just, like, they're not gonna know that I'm not you. Yeah. I promise you.
She smears blood on her face and her neck and her arms. She runs it through her hair and then, like, tugs it forward to hide her face. Like, fold her shoulders inward until Kaltain looks like Aelid. Mm-hmm. You could be sisters, Vernon had said. Now they could be twins. Aelid begs Kaltain to come with them and, like, leave. And she doesn't even respond and just asks Manon for a weapon. She asks for her dagger.
She's like, give me something, please. Thanks.
Kaltain tells Aelid to, like, look in the pocket of her dress because she switched clothes with Kaltain. She pulls out, like, a dark scrap of fabric. And then Kaltain, like, stabs into her arm and pulls out a black stone that was embedded in her. She sets the stone on the scrap of fabric and then, like, closes Aelid's hand around it. And she says to Aelid, you find Selena Sardathian, give this to her, no one else. Tell her that you can open any door if you have the key, and tell her to remember her promise to me, to punish them all. When she asks why, tell her I said that they would not let me bring the cloak she gave me, but I kept a piece of it to remember that promise she made, to remember to repay her for a warm cloak in a cold dungeon. Aelid kind of begs for her to come with them again. And she says she has no interest in living, not after what they did. I do not think my body could survive without their power. Kaltain huffed a laugh. I shall enjoy this, I think. Manon tugged Aelid to her side. They'll notice you without the chains. They'll be dead before they do, Kaltain said. I suggest you run. Manon didn't ask questions, and Aelid didn't have time to say thank you before the witch grabbed her arm, and they ran.
The Vogue demons have kind of, like, heard the commotion upstairs. So pretty much it was like the dungeon where Aelid was, you go down the stairs, it goes into the catacombs, which is where the yellow legs were. And so the, like, guards that were down there are coming up now at this point. Yeah. Manon and Aelid book it, like, they're out. They run up. The guards then grab Kaltain, thinking she's Aelid, bring her down into the catacombs. Once the demon, like, arrived to where she was, like, brought to, like, an altar similar to the yellow legs, like, by the commanders. And once that demon arrived, she unleashed her shadow fire upon all of them. Not just the demons. She took out everyone. The yellow leg witches, Just all of it.
Yeah. And she unleashes more than just the shadow fire that she had been using up until now. She calls it a ghost of the shadow fire that they had made her use previously. She burns through the whole room and then, like, basically all of Morath.
Yeah.
And just blows the whole place up. Death, devourer of worlds. She punishes them all. She burned the cradles, she burned the monsters within, she burned the men and their demon princes, and then she burned the witches, who looked at her with gratitude in their eyes, embracing the dark flame. Kaltain unleashed the last of her shadow fire, tipping her head to the ceiling toward a sky she'll never see again. She took out every wall, every column. As she brought it all crashing and crumbling around them, Kaltain smiled, and at last burned herself into ash on a phantom wind. This made me cry the first time that I read it. It made me cry the second time that I read it. I hate that her story has to end this way.
Yeah.
But it is it's the most fantastic, like, redemption arc for her.
Mm-hmm.
It's so well executed. And I cannot tell you how little at the beginning of this series I would have believed you if you were like, yeah, so you'll be crying when Kaltain dies. Fuck you. You're full of shit. Fuck that bitch. Oh, it's so well executed. It's so beautiful.
While Kaltain is down in the catacombs doing this, Manon realizes that Kaltain has unleashed her shadow fire and they're not out of the dungeons yet.
Yeah.
And Aelin is moving slow because she has a faulty foot and she has these chains on her. Even though I think at this point Manon has broken the chains, they're still around her ankles, so they're still dragging.
She cuts the thing
that's
in between them.
Yeah, so pretty much
the chain that's in between, but she still has the manacles on her legs with the chains dragging behind her. So, which isn't necessarily the most helpful thing on the planet, but it's definitely better than having your legs
together.
Yeah.
So Manon pretty much is you're moving too slow. We have to move faster. Manon is we have to be faster. So she grabs Aelin and just throws her over her shoulder and runs as fast as she can. As she's running, her goal is to the Eyrie, which is where her 13 is.
Yeah.
She sees Astrid and Sorrel and grabs them as well. It's go now, go and just run. Get to your wyverns. They all jump on their wyverns pretty much. And she's just in the air now, airborne, get out now. As they're flying off, Morath explodes in black flame behind them. And 1/3 of Morath is just obliterated because of Kaltain, which is phenomenal.
Ah, she's so great.
The blast sent them tumbling, but Manon gripped the girl tight, clenching the saddle with her thighs as hot, dry wind blasted past them. Abraxos screeched, shifting and soaring into the gust. When Manon dared to look, 1/3 of Morath was smoldering ruins. Where those catacombs had once been, where those yellow legs had been tortured and broken, where they had bred monsters, there was nothing left.
Thank God.
Yeah, so at least we have taken out their monsters that they bred. So that's really fun.
And the 13 are fuck this, we're out.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, pretty much. They fly off, which is great. They fly off into the day and, it's really good. It's really great. So we make it back to our dream team. Aelin she used a lot of her power. So she sleeps for 3 days. And we get a little we go back in time a little bit just because we get a note of Philippa existing. So Aelin sleeps and Rowan will not let anyone care for her except for him. So after like a healer has seen her and he knows that she's fine, he is like, now I will just exist in her presence until she wakes up. Meanwhile, he also went through hell. So like I also don't understand how he's not sleeping for 3 days, because he also was like on the verge of like, maybe not on the verge of burning out, but his power was dwindling. He had severe blood loss. Like
he's better at it.
He's done it before. Like he's
also
done this.
I think she's extra exhausted because her and Dorian like combined their magic together, and that has to be way more exhausting than just him using his magic on his own.
Yeah. I loved the note of Philippa looking after Dorian, though.
I know.
Because Philippa, as if you all remember from like book 1 and 2, she was the one that like was in and out of Selena's rooms all the time and was like pretty much telling her to get her shit together and like
she's great,
giving her a hard time the whole time, which was fantastic. Alive. Like this is our first note that like everyone didn't die when the castle exploded as well.
Yeah.
So Philippa's alive. We learn that like a lot of the help that weren't bad survived. Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of like the only people that died were the ones that needed to die. Which is
left, like, or they like, they booked it out of there.
Yeah. So,
and she's been taken to like her old rooms too. Mm-hmm. So like she's in the rooms that she was in when she was there as the assassin.
Mm-hmm.
Lysandra is also like guarding Aelin's room.
Mm-hmm. Lorcan shows up.
Yeah.
And he like tries to just like barge in, and Lysandra body blocked him. Teehee.
Yeah, she like Lorcan basically is like, get out of my way, and she said, you forgot to say please.
Yeah, we love Lysandra.
And he's like, I don't have time for this, and then Lysandra vomits black blood all over him. She's like, ooh, my bad, sorry. So
and then she does it a second time.
Yep, then she does it again. Whatever Lysandra had been basically just tearing through Vogue demons isn't good on your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Rowan says great. You deserved that. So like they argue.
Yeah.
They argue,
Rowan
and
calls him out.
Lorcan like reveals that really the only reason he came back was because he realized that Aedion was Gavriel's son.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I didn't know until it was too late. And that was why he came back. Because Gavriel is his brother, and he would not be able to like live with himself and face Gavriel again if he had let his son die, knowing that it was his son.
Yes.
And then he basically like goes to leave and says, it's not over, not even close. And then just Lorcan only shrugged and walked out covered in Lysandra's vomit and did not look back before disappearing down the hall. And then it kind of flips back to like, that was 3 days ago, and he hasn't like scented him since.
Mm-hmm.
So he leaves. And then Rowan just, like, we get a lot of information about what Rowan has been dealing with emotionally and physically since Aelin has been out.
Yeah.
He's very concerned that she's not going to wake up. He's concerned that, like, she burnt through all of her power.
The note of him, and I touched on this on purpose in her, like, jumping through the glass and it getting into her back, because there's a note of him having a hard time because Aelin, the second she got power, immediately just healed herself.
Yeah, she heals her like, whole body.
She's like, I need to be strong, heal body now. Which included those shards being healed into her back. So the glass is just still in her. And so while she's like asleep, unconscious, like something, a healer comes in and removes all the shards of glass from her back and he re-heals over those wounds.
Yeah,
that
he like could not deal
struggled.
with. Yeah, he like could not deal with the fact that they had to like cut in her to get the glass out.
They pretty much had to re-injure her.
Yeah,
which is hard
because she healed over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Yeah, not good. The second he like had these thoughts of her doing things like her own way, I thought this was funny. I should back up slightly. Before this happens, Rowan gifts Aedion a dagger, and it's a Doranel dagger, and he pretty much like calls him his brother, which I thought was like so sweet.
I know. It's so beautiful. Aedion initially refused, insisting he needs no thanks, but had worn the blade at his side ever since.
It's so great.
It's adorable.
I put a little... I've been taking notes on my phone because it's easier for me as I'm reading. Yeah. And I put a little sword with a little crying face next to it.
I see it now.
Yeah. It's a little dagger. And just, it's like a smile with a cry, so it's like happy tear.
Yeah. So he's kind of going through everything mentally. Like, they talk about how a lot of the that like he'd been through a lot of battles and had seen like kingdoms completely tore apart, and they healed, and that Rifthold would also heal. And kind of thinking through like some of the things that could have happened. And he turns back to Aelin, and Aelin is glaring at him, and he is glaring at her. Yeah.
So it's like there's his internal dialogue of, and Aelin, that brilliant, insane fool, had taken a tremendous risk in weaving her power with his. The prince had raw magic that could be shaped into anything. Aelin could have burnt herself out in a second. Rowan turned his head and glared at her, and found Aelin glaring back. We're just like, tee, she's awake, and she knows that you are disappointed.
So I saved the world, Aelin said, her voice like gravel, and yet I wake up to you being pissy. It was a group effort, Rowan said from a chair nearby, and I'm pissy for about 20 different reasons, most of them having to do with you making some of the most reckless decisions I've ever... And she immediately blurts out asking about Dorian. Mm-hmm. She asks about Dorian and Chaol, both of which are recovering and
alive,
are fine. He calls her Fireheart because she begins like crying. And then they like tell each other like kind of everything that happened while they were separated.
I thought this was funny too. So I'm reading this little section again, like I'm reading it over. Rowan's face remained drawn, thoughtful throughout. At last, she said, 3 days. Rowan nodded gravely. Distracting Aedion with running the castle is the only way I've kept him from chewing on the furniture. I forgot about that. They also, this is when Rowan admits to her that he felt her pain and thought she was dying, which like destroyed him in those moments. Like at that point, he thought she was dying. Him and Aedion were like on their last leg, and it was just like, I guess this is how we go out.
I thought you were dying, he said roughly. She held him tighter. Even if it made her back ache, I was. Please don't ever do that again. It was her turn to puff out a laugh. Next time, I'll just ask Dorian not to stab me. It's so good. They talk about, like, they talk about the fact that, like, he felt it. And then she also says that she could feel that something had gone wrong with him, too. And that it had killed her not being able to get to you. Next time we need to save the world, we do it together. She smiled faintly. Deal. He shifted his arm so he could brush her hair back. His fingers lingered along her jaw. You make me want to live too, Aelin Galathinius, he said. Not exist, but live. He cupped her cheeks and took a steadying breath as if he thought about every word these past 3 days over and over again. I spent centuries wandering the world, from empires to kingdoms to wastelands, never settling, never stopping, not for one moment. I was always looking towards the horizon, always wondering what waited across the next ocean, over the next mountain. But I think that whole time, all of those centuries, I was just looking for you.
When he says I love you, but Rowan says all those centuries I was just looking for you.
And then they hug each other, and then they kiss. The kiss was slow, thorough, as if they had all the time in the world, as if they were the only ones in it.
What I think is really funny is Aedion goes to walk in, and the door slams in his face, and it's because Rowan has used his wind power and he's like, nope. Get the fuck out of here.
We get, like, Aedion's perspective, and he's like, oh, I forgot that, like, I got a letter, and I should probably go give that to Rowan. And he, like, walks to the door and sees them both, and then, like, Rowan doesn't even look at him. This door just slams closed. He goes, all right, well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go somewhere else, I guess.
And he sees, like, Lysandra, tears gleaming in her eyes, even as she smiled. She gazed at the closed bedroom door as if she could see the prince and queen inside. That, she said, more to herself than to him. That is what I'm going to find one day. A gorgeous Fey warrior, Aedion said, shifting a bit. Lysandra chuckled, wiping away her tears, and gave him a knowing look before walking away. I want that for her too. I know, that's so sad.
So Dorian's golden ring is gone. And in this moment, Aelin realizes that she didn't just black out because she fell. Someone else was another player in their scenario when they were falling. So obviously Rowan slowed down their fall, but she blacked out, and she realizes that Lorcan is the reason she blacked out, and Lorcan then took the golden ring back. And I think it's a funny little tidbit, because she even says, like, maybe next time I have to, like, think about the wording better, because he never said he wasn't going to take it back. He just said, you could use this.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great.
Yeah, so they no longer have Athral's ring, which is the one that, like, grants them immunity from being taken over by the Vogue. Which is unfortunate. But he did also never make them verify that the Amulet of Orinth wasn't a fake.
So he still has a fake one, which is great.
Yeah, like, we're still not sure if he knows that the amulet is a fake, or if he still thinks that it's real and just now has both.
Yeah, this is when Aelin decides to go visit Dorian, because she hasn't seen him yet.
Dorian, so she goes to see Dorian, and we get Dorian's perspective, and he is struggling, rightfully so. She asks how he's feeling, and he says, fine, but also he hasn't left his room for the days that she's been there, that she's been asleep, and he says, your men put me in here so they could keep an eye on me. I wasn't aware I was allowed to leave. And she says, you can leave whenever you please. This is your castle, your kingdom. Is it? He dared ask. You are the king of Adelin now, she said softly, but not gently. Gently, of course it is. So she's very aware that he is not in a good place mentally. But I think it's really nice and important that she's very clear with him that he's not a prisoner. He's not being held here against his will. He's not being taken as a threat or, you know, a possible like enemy to her. He's just her friend who is like in a bad place, and she's there to help him whatever she can do. He like they talk about whether they believe what the king said about things, and like neither of them are really sure what's real and what isn't. And he worries about like the fact that Parrington is going to go to war with him now. And she says, we'll figure it out, but your being king is the first step of it. He feels like complete remorse over Sorsha, blames himself for what happened to her. And she says it's going to take a while and it might never be right again, but you will learn to face it and to endure it. What happened, Dorian, was not your fault.
I did put a note in this section, and I just wrote, his father was dead but no body, ? Because there is a note that there's no body, which freaks me out. I don't like in fantasy books when there's no body when someone dies. It's just a red flag for me.
Yeah, I don't know where it says that there's no body, but I do remember.
Not even a body was left to reveal what they'd done that day.
Yeah, I think for me,
I think Dorian's like power went into his dad and exploded him. He went boom.
I think he like turned into dust.
Yes.
Because of the like thing where he was like aging significantly, and then maybe just kind of did like a Thanos snap, turns to dust and floats away on the wind kind of thing.
Yes.
But the lack of a body is always concerning. Especially a verifiable body.
Yes.
Because as we know, even when you do have a body, if it's mangled enough, because Aelin taught us this,
yep,
no one will notice. So
they won't ask questions. They'll just be like, yep, you have their ring
Fair.
and a mangled face. Well, they
Fair.
fought back. Oh well. Yeah.
Oops.
So
yeah, you should never trust when there's no body.
I don't think the King of Otterlin is coming back. However,
right.
I did highlight this as a potential red flag for me later to like, you know, hopefully not bite myself in the ass for not thinking about it. I had to at least think it. So if it happens, I'm not blindsided.
Not finding a body is maybe one of the #1 red flags in a fantasy book.
Yep. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. She also says he also blames himself for Chaol. But she does like remind him that Chaol chose, like he wanted to be there to buy them time. That was the choice that he made. And she's saying all of the things that people should have said to her, and that she has realized now over the like years of dealing with Sam's death and how much it has torn her up. But she says, what I've just said, you're not going to believe me. I know, and that's fine. I don't expect you to. When you're ready, I'll be here. You're the Queen of Terrasen. You can't be. Says who? We're the masters of our own fates. We decide how to go forward. She squeezed his hand. You are my friend, Dorian. A flicker of memory from the haze of darkness and pain and fear. I came back for you. You both came back, he said. Her throat bobbed. You pulled me out of Endovir. I figured I could return the favor. Stop. I will not cry on this podcast. I will not.
Dorian looked at the carpet, at all the threads woven together. What do I do now? Just unflinching honesty, as there had been from the very start with her. What do I do? She had to swallow before she said, you light up the darkness. It's so good.
It's so good. So now we get Chaol.
Yes.
So Chaol is alive, and yes. I will put it on the record. I am happy that Chaol is alive. At no point, no matter how frustrating this man has been, have I ever wanted him to die. I just wanted him to, like, slowly go away.
Just, like,
be somewhere else.
Fade into the background.
So...
Go live happily ever after with Nesrin.
Yeah, just, like, somewhere else. That's fine. I think Nesrin maybe deserves better, but that's okay.
Fair.
So Chaol is Chaol and Dorian are chatting. So Dorian has gone to visit Chaol because Chaol cannot go to visit Dorian. Yes. What has happened to Chaol is that he's paralyzed. So he can't feel anything in his legs or his feet. He's, like, paralyzed from the, like, waist down.
Yeah. He doesn't realize at first, too.
Yeah. So he kind of wakes up and sees Dorian and, like, is initially, like, so happy that Dorian is Dorian and he is who himself. And then he realizes that he can't feel his legs or his toes. And Dorian says, the healers that survived said you shouldn't even be alive. Your spine, I think my father broke it in a few places. They said Amethy might have been able to, a flicker of rage, but she died. Rowan healed 2 of the injuries higher up. You would have been paralyzed from the neck down otherwise, but the lower fracture, Rowan said, was too complex and he didn't dare try to heal it. Not when he could make it worse. Tell me there's a butt coming, Chaol managed to say. If he couldn't walk, if he couldn't move... We won't risk sending you to Wenlin, not with Maeve there, but the healers at the Torre Chesme could do it. I'm not going to the southern continent. Not now that he's gotten Dorian back, not now that they all somehow survived. I'll wait for a healer. There are no healers left. Not magically gifted ones. My father and Parrington wiped them out. So, he can't be healed to be able to walk again unless he goes to the Torre Chesme. It's like the big healer school in the southern continent, that we learned about previously, and that, like, Nesrin's family has a connection to.
Well, she has a connection in the, like, that city where it is. Yeah.
Chaol does not want to go. Because Chaol
he just got his friend back.
Fought his way back to Dorian, and now Dorian is like, all right, go to the southern continent away where I cannot be, like, he can't be of any help to Dorian there. And he says, you never left me, Chaol. You never left me. And then Nesrin arrives, and it's revealed that she is now a female member of the Guard.
She's the captain.
And she is the captain of the Guard.
Which we love.
And she's the captain of the Guard because someone needs to be Hand of the King. And Dorian is going to make Lord Chaol Westfall Hand of the King. But to do that, Dorian is like, you need to go and get better so that you can serve me properly and, like, be my hand. So he orders, Dorian basically orders him to go to the Torre Chesme with Nesrin and, like, get healed.
Yeah, he also says that he needs allies. So, like, he's trying to make it, like, you need to go to the southern territories to get us allies. And while you're there, you're going to get healed. But, like, I need you there anyway to go make these allies. So it's like, you're not just doing it for yourself, because Dorian knows that Chaol is not going to do something to benefit himself. Yeah. It's just not who he is as a character. So he's like, you're going to do this for me, and it'll better our, like, continent if we have these allies. And while you're there, just take a little detour and go visit the healers.
I love that Dorian, like, starts joking again. Because he says, if I have to be stuck with king duty, then you're going to be stuck right here with me.
Yeah. It's so
like,
good.
Yay! He also turns to Nesrin and says, turns out I wound up breaking my promise to you after all, since I technically can't walk out of this castle. She bursts into tears. Remind me never to make a joke again, he said, even as the crushing, squeezing panic set in. So he basically accepts Dorian's orders and decides that they'll go to the southern continent. And he says he choked on a laugh. Let's have an adventure, Nesrin Falik.
Yay.
Yeah.
So all of our friends are alive. They're not necessarily fully well, but they're getting there. They're alive.
And they have a plan to get there.
Yes.
So that's good. We love plans.
Dorian is our king, and Chaol's gonna get fixed, and everything's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine.
It's gonna be okay.
And now,
we've only got 3 books left to read. Nothing could go terribly wrong.
So much happened in this book.
I know.
That's a lie.
And there's still 3 more.
Bald-faced lie to me. You're lying.
I have no forward knowledge whatsoever of what you're going to read. None. I've never seen your eyes roll so hard in my life. My God. Is this what Jared feels like all the time? This is crazy.
Yeah, but he does it back. That's the thing.
That's fair.
He does it to me more.
I know that's true.
Yeah. So, Manon, the 13, and Aelin are flying from Morath. We don't fully know exactly where they're going, but they're flying away, kind of as far as they can go. Aelin could not stop crying. She could not stop thinking about what Kaltain had done on her behalf, on the witch's behalf. She has not, she's experienced death, but not death to save her. So this, I think, is something that she is, coming to terms with, that, Manon showed up to save her. Kaltain showed up and saved her. All of these people were working to, bring her to safety. So they fly to Oakwald Forest, which, when I found out they landed there, I was like, what's happening? And Manon and the 13 pretty much drop off a lead. And is like, you cannot come back to Morath. We need them to think that you died. So you're not going to come back with us. Manon says you are to head north. She gives her flight leathers so that she can stay warm. She is like, go north, go to Terrasen, find your queen. And then Ali's like, I'm gonna find Selena Sardathian too.
Yeah. She said this is when Manon tells her that the castle's been destroyed, that the king of Adarlan is dead, and that basically Aelin Galathinius is actually alive.
Mm-hmm.
That she's alive and that she's won. And she also says that rumor has it is that Lord Ren Allsbrook is working in the north as a rebel.
Mm-hmm.
And Manon says hope. Manon said quietly. Things will get worse, won't they? Aelin said. Manon's nod was barely perceptible. Go north, Aelin. They're in Rifthold, but I bet they won't be there for long. Get to Terrasen, lie low, keep off the roads, avoid inns. There's money in the pack, but use it sparingly. Lie and steal and cheat if you have to, but get to Terrasen. Your queen will be there. I suggest not mentioning your mother's heritage to her.
Aelin bids Manon farewell and starts heading north. She hears all of the witches take flight on their wyverns, and she hears a joyous cry from the sky. Manon has circled back to like see a lead off, Manon and Abraxos, and she pretty much like waves goodbye. She hears the joyous cry in return, and Alid starts her long journey home to Terrasen. So Alid is now making her journey to Terrasen, and Aelin and the crew are still with Dorian at his castle. And Lysandra is in the process of bringing Aelin as much of her stuff as she can, so mostly her clothes, because Aelin has realized that like she can't just go and live in her apartment while all this stuff is happening. She has to like stay with Dorian, and then their next move is to go to Terrasen. Yeah. And so as sort of a thank you, Lysandra pretty much asks if there's any other tasks that she has to do before she has to go and retrieve Evangeline from the Felix like home, because Evangeline still is like off in a safe space so she doesn't get hurt at all. Aelin pretty much says like thank you for everything that you've done, but her way of saying thank you is she hands Lysandra a ring, which I think this whole little interaction is just like so perfect for the two of them, because Lysandra responds, proposing to me? How unexpected. Aelin, of course, waves her hand, heart pounding, just open it. Lysandra opens the lid and cocked her head. Are you proposing to me, Aelin Galathinius? Because there was a ring inside this box. Aelin held her friend's gaze. There's a territory in the north, a small bit of fertile land that used to belong to the Allsbrook family. Aedion took it upon himself to inform me that the Allsbrook have no use for it, so it's been sitting open for a while. It could use a lady. The blood drained from Lysandra's face. What? It's plagued by ghost leopards. Hence the engraving on the ring. But I suppose if there were anyone capable of handling them, it'd be you. So pretty much as Aelin's thank you, she gifts Lysandra this land to become a lady, so that she is no longer seen as just like a courtesan from Rifthold.
The other part too was that there was a key symbol like above the leopard, and Aelin says to remind you of who now holds your freedom, you, which is so beautiful. Aelin gives the best gifts to Lysandra. I'm just saying.
It's true.
Lysandra is like, I don't deserve this. No one will ever serve me. Like, people are going to resent me for like appointing me. And Aelin, of course, is like, I don't give a shit. I do not care. And if anyone makes shit of it, like, they can burn in hell. So, doesn't matter. This is the best line that Aelin ever says, I swear. Lysandra traced a finger over the card of arms that Aelin designed. What's the territory called? I have no idea, Aelin said. Lysandria sounds good. So does Lysandrius, or maybe Lysandraland.
Yeah, the Lysandraland got me. I thought it was so cute and funny.
Is so good. So this is basically how she asks Lysandra to be like part of her court, and Lysandra accepts, and she welcomes her to her court as a lady, which is beautiful.
They are now sitting down and like having dinner for the first time as a court, and Dorian kind of walks in. He like knocks on the door, and Aedion opens it, and Dorian is like, oh, I don't mean to like bother you all. And they all are like, no, join us. Like, come eat, have food with us. Like, come eat.
Aelin says, sit your ass down.
Yeah, pretty much. Because he was like, I don't want to impose. I don't want to like intrude. And he's like, no, you're our friend. And then they cheers to a new world and to freedom, which is so wonderful.
Everything's looking up.
Dorian that day had signed all kingdoms that his father had taken over into freedom. 10 years later, they were all together again and were friends because it all started 10 years ago. And it's a great little circle that they're finally back.
Yeah, from
hopefully
10
themselves.
years from like when they had visited like the first time.
Mm-hmm.
When they were kiddos.
Yeah.
And then Sarah, does mean things to us. Because literally the next line is, the Duke survived and so did Vernon. Great.
Of course.
So cool. A third of Morath had been blown up, and a good number of guards and servants with it, along with 2 covens and a lead lock-in. So, positive, they think that a lead's dead. Let's go.
Yep.
It worked. Yay.
They also have a bunch of people trying, like, digging up through all of the debris and rubble. Mm-hmm. Manon's not really sure why. We are sure why, though, because they want Caltaine. I believe Vernon and Parrington know that this was Caltaine. Parrington at least knows that Caltaine did whatever happened. And was a part of it in some way.
It exploded with Shadowfire. So
yeah.
Unless they have other beings with Shadowfire, pretty sure they know what happened.
Yeah. And Parrington hid his word key. My belief is that the word key was in Caltaine.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for Caltaine's body because he wants his word key back. So he has everyone trying to figure out like where she is. Manon believes that they're looking for a lead's body, which they could be looking in conjunction for both of them. But as the reader, you know that they're looking for Caltaine and more specifically the word key because she had it. But now Elite has it and she's off to Terrasen. Woo!
Manon threatens Vernon. Just because she's dead, Lord, do not think that I will forget what you tried to do to her. Vernon paled. You can't touch me. Manon dug her nails in deeper. No, I can't, she purred into his ear. But Aelin Galathinius is alive, and I hear she has a score to settle. She yanked out her nails and squeezed his shoulder, setting the blood running down Vernon's green tunic before she stalked from the room.
Fuck you, Vernon.
So good. Fuck you, Vernon.
They, of course, Astrid and Manon are talking, and they know that things are changing. And Manon is also informed that her grandmother would arrive, and that she needs to get the witches ready. And they'll need to train for battle. Very specifically. So they don't know what battle. They just know that they're finally going to be like used as the weapon that they were brought in to be.
Yeah.
Which is scary. We don't like that.
Things are changing, Manon said. Good, Astrid said. We're immortals. Things should change, and often, or they'll get boring. Manon lifted her brows and her second grinned. Manon shook her head and grinned back. So we have wrapped up the lead. We've wrapped up the witches. We've basically wrapped up Dorian and Chaol.
Yep.
And now all that's left, and Lysandra. And now all that's left is
Aelin, Aedion, and Rowan.
Yeah.
So Rowan is doing his rounds of making sure that nothing is going to be like in their way. He's flying about as a hawk, kind of like looking at stuff. And so Aelin kind of has a second to herself, and she tries to go down to Elena's tomb, but it's blocked. And when she comes back up she like uses her secret passage from her bedroom. And when she comes back, of course, Dorian and Chaol are sitting in front of her fireplace. And it was like they were back to when it was just the three of them.
Book one.
It was such a like cute little moment. She has this like, my friends are here, and she notes the changes in them. She notes how Chaol is now in a wheelchair because he is paralyzed from like the waist down. She notes how Dorian stands and how Dorian is a king. Like Dorian is now the king of Otterlin. And it's just like really nice. And so as part of their conversation, when she arrives back to them, she talks to Chaol about how he's going to the southern continent, and similar to how Dorian is like, you need to go and like have allies. She then like doubles down on him needing to go and be an ambassador for Terrasen. Like she pretty much appoints Chaol as an ambassador to Terrasen, and you need to like ally with the southern continent, which I think is such a nice. It's such an olive branch.
Yeah.
Dorian said, "So here we are." "The end of the road," Aelin said with a half smile. "No," Chaol said, his own smile faint, tentative, "the beginning of the next." You're like, oh, Chaol, finally.
I think it's also cool the way that they, like, Dorian does bring up, like, why did the Eye of Elena only work in that moment? Because, like, he'd been in peril. Chaol had been wearing it for months.
Mm-hmm.
And it never really reacted when he was in danger. And Aelin says, "Courage of the heart. Elena once told me that courage of the heart was rare, so to let it guide me. When Chaol chose to, she couldn't form the words, she tried again. I think that courage saved him, made the amulet come alive for him. It had been a gamble, a fool's one, but it had worked." I love that bit so much, and I think it's the thing to me that, like, sets up... She does such a great job of wrapping everything up and, like, doing a nice, okay, let's sit for a bit, wrap up the book in a nice way.
Yes.
And then, because she knows we're splitting everyone up, so it's going to be a while before we, like, see some of these characters
together again, yeah.
Together again, and it's... The way that she does it is so beautiful, and I think it's a great way to set up that Chaol book of, like, okay, he has chosen this other path now. He's on that journey of, like, he's got his character growth.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's really awesome. It's so well written. She weaves everything together so nicely.
So Dorian and Chaol leave, and her and Lysandra curl up in bed together, which I think is such a sweet little thing. There is a note that she's unsure where Rowan slept, which I thought was funny. And then they, of course, I'm assuming Rowan didn't sleep. He was probably out patrolling because he's Rowan. And so he was just like, I'll let the two of them have their, like, sister bonding time, and I'm going to just do some laps around to make sure we're still safe. Aedion, of course, bursts into their room to wake them up, and Lysandra and Aelin are not morning people. And so we learned Aelin's not a morning person in, like, books 1 and 2. Lysandra becomes the leopard again and chases Aedion out of the room, which I think is hilarious.
And then she comes back, still in her ghost leopard form, and, like, curls up next to Aelin like a big cat.
Yeah.
It's so cute. They managed to get another 30 minutes of sleep before Aedion came back and chucked a bucket of water on them. He was lucky to escape alive.
Yes.
I would also not let him live.
Yes.
It's just... the balls to throw... Especially on the two of them. I don't know how he survived.
No.
So they get up to go and leave and return to Terrasen.
Yeah, they're pretty much saying their goodbyes at this point. to Dorian and Chaol.
Yeah.
Aelin said goodbye to Chaol, and in that moment, he had kind of a, can I see it? And she knew exactly what he meant, and she showed him her, like, fire magic.
Mm-hmm.
And Chaol said it's lovely, which is the first time he's admitting to Aelin that he's not scared of her and her magic, which I think is such a, like, button up from, we started this book and he hated her, and we're ending this book and they're friends again, and he's not scared of her. A big part of that, his beginning character, was that he was scared of magic coming back, and he noted her, like, cleaving the earth and, like, seeing her in her fae form for those moments, and was, like, scared of what she could become. So she puts a little, like, she has her moment with Chaol, and he pretty much, like, shows her that he's not scared of her, and so she leaves, like, a flame, like, on his, like, nightstand or something, like, near him, and she's like, I can give him this magic for this short period of time until she's, like, out of range, pretty much, which I thought was such a sweet little thing. Like, it's like she's leaving a part of herself with him for a bit, of, like, I want you to know that I, like, care about you as well, and, like, I'm happy that we're at this point in time. She also
has, like, her final moment with Dorian too.
Yeah.
Their stuff is so sweet because it, like, you can just tell how much it ties back to her and Sam. It's such a, like, lovely parallel. And he says, so much has changed. And she says, and will keep changing. But there are things that won't change. I will always be your friend. His throat bobbed. I wish I could see her just one last time, to tell her, to say what's in my heart. She knows, Aelin said, blinking against the burning in her eyes. I'll miss you, Dorian said, though I doubt the next time we meet will be in such civilized circumstances. She tried not to think about it. He gestured over her shoulder to her court. Don't make them miserable. They're only trying to help you. She smiled to her surprise. A king smiled back. Send me any good books that you read, she said. Only if you do the same. She embraced him one last time. Thank you for everything, she whispered. Dorian squeezed her, then stepped away as Aelin mounted her horse and nudged it into a walk.
It's so sweet. I love the, like, all the little tiebacks to...
Yeah, because they also say, like, they start to ride out of Rifthold, and she didn't see one slave, didn't hear one whip, and as they passed by the domed Royal Theater, there was music, beautiful, exquisite music playing within.
Yay.
We do get one, like, last bit back in Dorian's perspective, and it kind of does just show that, like, he is still struggling. He's not super confident in, like, how he's going to fare without Aelin, without Chaol. I mean, I'm genuinely a little bit surprised that Aelin, like, left as early as she did, because she was like, I won't leave, I'll stick around until you're ready. And then, like, she just believes Dorian when he's like, okay, great, I'm ready, like, 2 days later, and then they just leave.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But he goes out onto the balcony, and he opens the balcony doors, and a massive shadow perched atop the glass wall. Not a shadow, but a giant beast, its claws gripping the wall, its rings tucked into its body, shimmering faintly in the glow of the full moon, shimmering like the white hair of the rider atop it. From the distance, he knew she was staring right at him, her hair streaming to the side like a ribbon of moonlight caught in the river breeze. Dorian lifted a hand, the other rising to his neck, no collar. The rider on the wyvern leaned down in her saddle, saying something to her beast. It spread its massive, glimmering wings and leapt into the air. Each beat of its wing sent a hollowed-out, booming gust of wind toward him. It flapped higher, her hair streaming behind her like a glittering banner, until they vanished into the night, and he couldn't hear its wings beating anymore. No one sounded an alarm, as if the world had stopped paying attention for the few moments they looked at each other. And through the darkness of his memories, through the pain and despair and terror, he tried to forget, a name echoed in his head.
Manon!
Manon Blackbeak sailed into the starry night, Abraxas warm and swift under her, the blazing moon bright, the mother's full womb above her. She didn't know why she bothered to go, why she'd been curious, but there had been the prince, no collar to be seen around his neck, and he had lifted his hand in greeting, as if to say, I remember you. And she flies back to the 13. But Manon hoped they'd all survive it. She hoped. It's so good! So the last bit is them returning to Terrasen. They ride for like 3 grueling weeks, and Rowan spots ahead that they've basically made it and flies back to Aelin. And Aedion says, like, it's just up this hill. And she says, what? And he says, you'll see. Aelin looked at Rowan, who had been scouting ahead for part of the morning as a white-tailed hawk. Now he walked beside her, guiding his black stallion along. He lifted his brows at her silent demand for information. I'm not going to tell you. She glowered at him. Buzzard. Rowan grinned, but with every step, Aelin did the calculations about what day it was, and they crested the hill and halted. Aelin released the reins and took a staggering step, the emerald grass solid underfoot. Aedion touched her shoulder. Welcome home, Aelin. A land of towering mountains, the staghorns, spread before them, with the valleys and rivers and hills, a land untamed, wild beauty. Terrasen. The smell of pine and snow. How had she never realized that Rowan's scent of Terrasen, of home? He smells like Terrasen. Aelin ran a hand over the rough rock, and the sun-warmed stone tingled as if in greeting. Then she stepped beyond the stone, and at long last, Aelin Ashriver Galathinius was home. And that's the end of the book. It's so good.
It's so good. That
it's the
moment
perfect ending
of
before
pine and snow was, I think, my favorite portion of the whole book. Was her recognizing finally that every time she referenced his scent of pine and snow, I thought, that's Terrasen. She referenced it. Any cool breeze that came from the north was pine and snow. And then anytime Rowan was around was pine and snow. And so for it to finally hit her, I was just like, thank God she finally realizes that he is home. He is so her beautiful home.
He also says, I feel like I've been looking for this place my entire life.
It's his home too. We love it.
It's perfect. It is the perfect ending to that book.
It's so good. Friends, thank you so much for making it through Queen of Shadows with us. It's so good. It's my favorite book so far in the series. Like 1,000%.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
Thank you for checking out our podcast and getting to know us. We hope you enjoy your time here. You can find us at the Smut Peddlers on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok for additional content. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.